It's great to be back here in Tokyo. I look forward to this event every year, and it's nice to see so many familiar faces here in the audience. So thank you for coming today to the 12th annual FIDO Tokyo seminar. It's been a long journey with lots of growth for FIDO Alliance. But our fundamental vision and approach really hasn't changed since our founding in 2013. Our goal all along has been to enable user authentication that is simpler and stronger than passwords and other forms of legacy authentication. Simpler and stronger both must be true, and we do this through open standards for user-friendly public key cryptography. FIDO Alliance is what makes things possible. At our foundation is a diverse, committed, and engaged community. We have a broad range of members, including those who have to deliver services to billions of users worldwide. So our community underpins everything that we do and everything that we've done. Now at FIDO Alliance, we do three things, and I think we do them quite well. First, we create technical specifications based on real-world business requirements. Secondly, we run market adoption programs and enablement programs. Then last but not least, we run robust certification programs that serve as a glue to the industry and enable interoperable solutions to be delivered worldwide. This formula of these three things has been the key to our success with passkeys and establishes a secure, usable, and privacy-preserving foundation for the Alliance to also address adjacent markets and new use cases, one of which I'll talk about momentarily. But let's start with passkeys. And they've come a long way. In 2022, we introduced passkeys, and the first two companies to commit to support them were PayPal and Entity Docomo. 1 year later, in 2023, we estimated over 7 billion accounts could use a passkey. By 2024, we estimated 15 billion accounts could use a passkey. And we also introduced that year, last year, Passkey Central. Now this has been established as the world's leading independent resource on passkey insights. So that's where we stood last year. And frankly, we're at a point now where we can't keep up with growth. Right? There's more passkey deployments than we know about. But what we estimate now isn't the total number of accounts that can use passkeys. What we know is that over 3 billion, between 3 and 4 billion accounts are actually secured by passkeys. So in 3 years' time, we went from 0 to 3 billion plus, and that's phenomenal growth in just a very short amount of time. It's very rewarding to work with technology that is changing lives, and that's in the hands of consumers around the world. And when I personally come across a site where I can register a passkey, it still gives me a rush. It never gets old. Just in the past few weeks, I've enrolled passkeys for my grocery store, for an airline, and even for my bank, right? Which is an exciting new trend for FIDO Alliance this year. In fact, we've seen a lot of banks deploy FIDO. This is one of the headlines, I think, for FIDO Alliance in 2026, has been banks all over the world embracing passkeys for sign-in. And a lot of this has come just in the past few months. Right? So in the US, that includes Chase, Wells Fargo, and US Bank, all of whom are newer deployers of passkeys. Now, I know in addition to some banks, there are numerous deployments from security companies and security dealers here in Japan as well, which has been a nice trend that we'd like to see as well, as we see listed here. So here are a lot of ones that have either deployed or have committed to deploy passkeys. And what's interesting about that is that these are highly regulated companies, and regulated industry tends to follow regulations, of course. Now it's important to remember that when we introduced passkeys 3 years ago, the only regulations on the book pertaining to authentication only contemplated passwords. and how to make passwords less risky and mitigating them with layers and factors. No one had contemplated a true password replacement like passkeys. So we've spent the past 3 years trying to change this, and we're seeing great progress. So 3 examples I have listed here. One is NIST, which was cited previously as well. NIST's updated digital identity guidelines cite passkeys as meeting AAL2 for unphishability. And NISA in Europe has cited FIDO as meeting MFA requirements for unphishability as well. And the other logo you see here, this is the Taiwan Financial Services Commission, which has launched something called Financial FIDO, which allows Taiwanese citizens to make transactions without having to rely on a username and password, leveraging FIDO technology instead. And then, of course, here in Japan, Digital Agency, Financial Services Agency, have recommended passkeys to combat the growing threat and the growing number of AI-driven social engineering attacks on consumers. All right, so we're seeing a lot of good regulation pushing for passkey adoption. Likewise, we see a lot of governments actually using passkeys. All right, so these are 3 examples in Australia, the UK, and Germany, but many other countries also allow citizens to use passkeys to sign in to government services. And overall, we've seen very broad adoption of passkeys. And so I showed you that other slide. This is here in Japan. So while we can't keep track of all the different FIDO deployments, our very active and very outstanding FIDO Japan working group has done its best to track. And we have 55 different deployments here that are live in Japan using passkeys. Again, amazing progress. Because I've been here for the past 3 years, and frankly, the reception and interest of passkeys has grown dramatically and noticeably year after year. So we see results such as this. And let me talk again about the FIDO Japan working group. We're incredibly grateful for this working group and for Moriyama-san's leadership. This working group has been an innovation hub for FIDO adoption in Japan and beyond. And Japan has really been an exemplar, a great example for other countries on how they can follow suit and strengthen their own economies and protect their own citizens. So thank you to the FIDO Japan working group. Speaking of all this momentum, one question I often get is, what does passkey success look like? Right? What should I be striving for as I roll out passkeys? And so we launched something called the Passkey Index, which is set to create benchmarks that we can publish and that new relying parties and new deployers can shoot for. And so this was based on data shared by the companies you see there, who shared data in an anonymous way, and we aggregated that and found these statistics. Right? So we found that they're having a 93% signing success rate with passkeys, which is a dramatic improvement over other models, and a 73% decrease in login time. It's time to sign in. And some companies report over an 80% reduction in help desk costs and incidents. So very tangible business benefits associated with using passkeys. So it's not just a security benefit. We're turning the sign-in from a cost into a business opportunity with passkeys. And then, of course, the Passkey Index Japan, work done by the FIDO Japan working group, has done some added analysis and found that use of passkeys is pretty consistent across different age and gender groups. I mentioned Passkey Central before. I encourage you to visit the site. It is translated into Japanese. This remains the industry's leading resource for passkey practitioners, addressing everything from business case development to rollout guides, and houses our design guidelines. We also will be investing more in this space and expanding the content to look at enterprise and workforce practitioners as well. So that's what we've done with passkeys, right? And I now want to take a few minutes to talk about the other part of my presentation, which is what are the possibilities that we can build upon in our foundation at FIDO Alliance and building on our success with passkeys. Earlier today, the FIDO Alliance announced that we have expanded our mission to focus on digital credentials, including the formation of a digital credentials working group. Our goal here is straightforward yet very ambitious. We want to accelerate the adoption of verifiable digital credentials and identity wallets worldwide. Now, we don't do this without a lot of thought. We spent the better part of this year speaking with major issuers and consumers of digital credentials, our standards development partners, and the feedback to us has been very positive that FIDO Alliance is the right body to take on this challenge. And so we're going to do so together with our industry partners to unlock the potential of verifiable digital credentials. And this is our vision, right? A world where individuals can securely control, present, and delegate their digital credentials with the same trust, simplicity, and interoperability that passkeys do today for user authentication. In the very near future, the contents of our physical wallets and much, much more will be fully digitalized on mobile devices and at global scale. And all this needs to be anchored by a verified identity and root of trust to allow for simple and secure utilization and recovery. Now, this is not a new vision. Many of us have been talking about this literally for decades. So the challenge, and a lot of governments, as we just heard, are issuing wallets, right? And here in Japan and elsewhere in Europe, every member state must issue an identity wallet to its citizens by the end of 2026. So vision and ambition hasn't held us back. What's held us back has been fragmentation. And this is part of the challenge that we see. All right, so the challenge is threefold. First of all, there's multiple standards. Right? There are standards from FIDO Alliance, there's standards from ISO, from OpenID Foundation, W3C, and others, all very well-intended, very strong technologies covering credential formats and presentation protocols. But it's also complex because there's multiple stakeholders. Right? There's issuers of credentials, such as national governments or licensing bureaus. There's holders, who are the actual wallet providers. And then there's verifiers. So people actually need to verify the veracity of a credential. And then on top of these moving parts, there's no certification. Right? There's a lack of certification standards, which is across the board, right? Which is holding back utilization by all parties involved. Right? There's currently no end-to-end testing to validate wallet implementations of wallets and credentials. So we intend to apply our best practices to this space, right? Going back to our model for success. Right? So we will develop technical specifications, right? Building on CTAP to create a new protocol for cross-device credential presentation. We will run industry certification programs. This is the glue of what we're doing, right? We'll certify both our own protocols and third-party protocols for different types of wallet flows. And last but not least, we will run market adoption and enablement programs. Now, if you draw the analogy to passkeys, before we announced passkeys, of course, FIDO was around for a long time. But when we introduced passkeys, we introduced a brand, a term, and best practices on how to deploy them. And so I think it's fair to say that digital credentials need to have a passkey-like moment, where people can start understanding what it means to have a digital identity and use digital credentials. And we will do that through our marketing and enablement programs. And this here shows what it will look like. Right? On the left-hand side, this shows a similarity between passkey architecture and digital credentials architecture. On the left-hand side is passkeys, the right-hand side is digital credentials. The architecture for digital credentials will support multiple presentation protocols with multiple credential formats. And as you see, of course, multiple standards contribute to the ecosystem. Not just FIDO, also OpenID Foundation, W3C, ISO, our partners who we will work with hand in hand to make this happen. So, to summarize, this is how we're shaping the possible in digital identity. Right? We will continue to focus on making passkeys ubiquitous. We want to make sure they continue to progress, making their momentum unstoppable across consumer, workforce, and high assurance settings. And now we're building upon that foundation with important new work focused on unlocking the potential of digital credentials at global scale. And there are lots more interesting areas for us to embark upon in the future as well, and to do so together. If you're not already an active participant in FIDO Alliance, I encourage you to become one, because we need everyone's viewpoint and everyone's inputs to make this possibility our future. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you.